Two plants standing less than a foot apart. One is growing strong, deep green leaves, steady growth. The other is struggling, yellowing from the base up, barely moving. You check the soil. You adjust the water. You inspect the leaves. But nothing changes. Sometimes, the problem is not the soil, the fertilizer, or even the weather. It is the way two plants have been forced to share the same space. Plants use water, light, root space, and airflow differently. When those needs collide inside a cramped bed, one or both plants may struggle. Here are 7 plant pairs that often cause trouble when crowded together, and what to do instead. Pair number 7, strawberry and cabbage. Imagine a strawberry fruit trying to ripen under a roof of cabbage leaves. This isn't a story about one plant poisoning the other. It's a story about canopy, airflow, and space inside a small bed. Strawberries are low-growing plants. The fruit forms close to the ground, which means it depends on good light and moving air around the leaves and berries. The plant also needs room to send out runners. Because strawberries are perennial and spread through runners, they usually perform better in a stable area where seasonal crops will not repeatedly crowd or disturb them. Cabbage produces large, wide leaves that, as it matures, form a low, dense canopy right over the surface of the bed. In a shared space, that canopy ends up directly above the strawberry fruiting zone, reducing light, limiting airflow, and keeping the area around the fruit damp longer than it should be. The stronger issue is not nutrition. If the soil is good, fertility can be managed. The real conflict is shading, ventilation, and space. The fix: plant strawberries at the edge of the bed so runners can travel outward. Place the cabbage where its mature leaves will not cast prolonged shade over the strawberry bed. Remove only yellowing, damaged, or soil-touching lower cabbage leaves when necessary to improve airflow. Avoid removing healthy foliage unnecessarily. Use a clean mulch layer under the strawberries to keep fruit off wet soil. Cabbage does not poison strawberries. It can simply create a low, damp canopy exactly where strawberry fruit needs light and moving air. Pair number 6, cucumber and potato. This is an operational conflict, not a chemical one, not a disease issue. One plant sprawls across the ground and spreads quickly. The other needs soil mounded around its stems periodically and dug up at harvest. When you put these two in the same narrow bed, you may find that managing one crop properly begins to interfere with the other. Early in the season, you probably won't see the problem. Vines are small, potato rows look tidy. But mid-season, cucumber vines spread fast and cover the soil surface, exactly when potatoes may need additional soil pulled around their stems to protect developing tubers and maintain the hill. In a narrow bed, hilling the potatoes often means reaching through or stepping around the cucumber vines. And come harvest, every time you lift a vine and dig for potatoes, you risk damage to the vines or disturbing the nearby cucumber roots. Train cucumbers onto a trellis at the edge of the bed and leave a working path that lets you hill and harvest potatoes without crossing the cucumber zone. These two plants don't directly interfere with each other. They just make it hard to take care of both at the same time. Pair number 5, cucumber and rosemary. One of these plants wants moisture-holding soil. The other wants water to drain almost immediately. Cucumber and rosemary don't dislike each other. They just need completely different growing conditions. And when they share a bed, you can't serve both well from the same soil and watering routine. Cucumbers need evenly moist soil, especially while flowering and filling fruit. Uneven moisture causes stress quickly. Leaves wilt. Fruit can misshape or drop while still small. Rosemary is a Mediterranean herb. What it needs is fast drainage, a root zone that doesn't stay wet. When the soil stays wet for too long, growth may weaken, foliage may yellow, and root problems can develop before the full extent of the damage is obvious above ground. Worth noting, newly planted rosemary still needs water to establish, but even then, it dislikes soil that stays saturated. When both plants share the same soil profile and watering schedule, it becomes difficult to serve both well. The fix: grow rosemary in a separate container with fast-draining potting mix or in a raised, well-drained area away from the cucumber bed. If both areas use the same drip system, adjust the emitters separately. Rosemary needs a fast-draining root zone that does not remain saturated, while cucumbers need more consistent moisture. Cucumbers want evenly moist soil. Rosemary wants a fast-draining root zone that does not remain saturated. These two plants are asking for two different worlds. Pair number 4, tomato and fennel. Fennel is often accused of chemically suppressing nearby plants. But in a real garden, the evidence is much less clear. Mature fennel can also become tall and wide enough to compete for light and root space. And those physical effects alone are worth taking seriously. Tomatoes need full sun and good airflow. A dense canopy overhead or anything blocking their light for extended periods works against them. When mature fennel is positioned where its canopy can cast prolonged shade over the tomatoes, it can compete for light and root space in ways that are entirely physical. Fennel is also mentioned in the context of allelopathy, the idea that a plant can release compounds affecting nearby plant growth. But shade, water competition, and root competition can all produce the same symptoms, and those factors are often enough to explain the problem before allelopathy enters the picture. If tomatoes beside fennel are struggling, check sunlight, irrigation, soil fertility, and spacing before drawing conclusions. 4. Placement. Grow fennel at the edge of the garden or in a large, deep container with enough room for its mature root system, not in the middle of an active vegetable bed, and not where its canopy spreads over your tomatoes. Fennel isn't necessarily the enemy of tomatoes, but it's an unpredictable enough neighbor that it's worth giving it its own space. The first 4 pairs mostly create conflicts in spacing, water, and day-to-day care. The final 3 raise the stakes. One pair shares the same caterpillar under 2 different names. One pair shares a fast-moving disease, and the last can alter the entire growing environment around it. Pair number 3. And here's the thing most people don't realize. The same caterpillar species that attacks corn has a different name when it attacks tomatoes. On corn, it's called the corn earworm. On tomatoes, it's called the tomato fruitworm. 1 species, 2 names, 2 host plants. The larvae bore into corn ears, feeding on developing kernels and leaving entry wounds that mold can follow. On tomatoes, larvae bore into developing fruit, often leaving a small entry hole and insect droppings, also known as frass, near the feeding site. Their feeding damages the fruit and may allow decay organisms to enter. Signs to look for: small entry holes on fruit or ears, frass near the opening, and larvae feeding inside the fruit or ear. Planting tomatoes next to corn doesn't create the pest. Adult moths can fly between host plants, so separating the crops does not guarantee protection. What matters most is monitoring. When ears are forming, and when tomato fruit is still small and green, check both areas at the same time. Check developing fruit and ears before larvae tunnel deeply inside. That's when damage is easier to detect and easier to act on. Look for entry holes and frass. Remove affected fruit and ears promptly. For layout, don't crowd corn densely next to tomatoes, and don't let corn shade the tomato bed or restrict its airflow. When it comes to this pest, tomatoes and corn aren't 2 separate plants. They're 2 dining tables set side by side, serving the same guest. Picture 3 days of cool, overcast weather after heavy rain. The leaves are still wet the following morning. That is the moment pair number 2 becomes a real concern. The problem here doesn't come from their differences. It comes from the fact that tomatoes and potatoes are similar enough to share the same pathogens. Tomatoes and potatoes both belong to the nightshade family, Solanaceae. Peppers and eggplants are in the same family too. Because these crops are closely related, some pathogens are capable of infecting more than one member of the family. Late blight is the most significant example for this pair. Early blight can affect both as well, though it's generally considered less severe. Late blight is caused by Phytophthora infestans. Not a typical fungus, but a distinct type of pathogen. It thrives in cool, wet conditions. Prolonged rain, heavy dew, leaves that stay wet for extended periods. An infected tomato or potato plant can become a source of infection for other susceptible plants nearby. Crowded, overlapping foliage keeps leaves wet longer, which makes it easier for the pathogen to spread and harder for you to spot problems early. A note on distance: spacing plants further apart won't stop spores, but crowding makes foliage stay wet longer and makes the bed harder to monitor, both things that favor the pathogen. Symptoms to watch for: dark lesions that spread quickly on leaves, foliage decline after wet weather, and symptoms that may also appear on stems, fruit, or tubers. Many other diseases look similar. Don't diagnose from a single sign. If you're unsure, contact a local agricultural extension service or plant diagnostic clinic. Preventive practices: keep the canopy open so leaves dry faster, and water at the base, not over the foliage. Do not place suspected late blight material in an ordinary backyard compost pile. Follow local extension guidance for safe disposal. Remove volunteer potato plants that emerge from tubers left in the soil before establishing tomatoes nearby the following season. For long-term management, rotate nightshade family crops. Avoid planting tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, or eggplant in the same spot year after year. Rotation reduces pressure from soil-borne pathogens and crop residue, though it won't stop spores that arrive on the wind. Most gardeners blame one chemical, but the tree may be changing 4 things at once. Pair number 1, black walnut and tomato. This is the pair where most people have heard the story about a toxin in the soil. But the full picture is more complex, and understanding it is what helps you make better placement decisions. Black walnut is a large hardwood tree, wide canopy, significant shade. An extensive root system that spreads far and competes heavily for water and nutrients. Many parts of the black walnut contain juglone, a compound long cited as a factor that can affect certain sensitive plants growing nearby. The extent of its effect in real garden soil is still difficult to separate from the influence of shade and root competition. Tomatoes appear on many lists of plants sensitive to juglone. But here's the problem with blaming juglone alone. When a tomato grows near a black walnut, it's already dealing with reduced sunlight from the canopy, drier soil from heavy root competition, strong nutrient competition, and a root zone already physically occupied by an established tree. Shade, water stress, and root competition can all produce the same wilting and decline, whether juglone is present or not. The practical starting point: before planting anything near a large tree, check how many hours of direct sunlight that spot actually receives. Tomatoes need full sun. If the spot doesn't meet that, that's already reason enough not to plant there. Regardless of juglone, avoid areas with dense surface roots, dry compacted soil, and heavy above-ground competition. If you want to grow vegetables in that part of the garden, use large containers in a genuinely sunny location as far from the mature canopy and major surface roots as practical. Moving beyond the canopy drip line may reduce shade and root competition, but it does not guarantee that tree roots are absent. If using a raised bed, choose one with a barrier that prevents tree roots from entering and position it in a spot that gets adequate direct light. Avoid placing sun-loving nightshade crops directly beneath the canopy or within the most competitive root zone of a mature black walnut. Most people think about a single toxin in the soil, but sometimes the problem is an entire tree, quietly changing the light, the water, and the root environment around it all at once. The lesson is not to memorize a list of plant enemies. It is to notice how each crop uses light, water, root space, and airflow. When two needs cannot be met in the same bed, separating them is usually easier than rescuing both later. A healthy garden is not just planted, it is arranged. Are you growing any of these pairs together, and are they struggling or doing just fine? Tell me below, and subscribe for more gardening guides that explain not only what to do, but why it works.